Side 10. Tilly followed Irene Richards into the house, which had stood empty for some time. It had that neglected look, rather decadent and sad, as if no one cared whether it lived or died. They reached the kitchen and sat on a pair of new chairs, whose legs were still wrapped in cardboard.
"I'm Tilly Povey," said the visitor, "and you're Mrs. Richards. Really, I'm supposed to pretend I don't know who you are, but I've bread rising, so I haven't time for all that carry-on. Anyway, I work next door for your son, but I'd no idea that you were moving in here." She glanced around the kitchen. "Everything's new. I thought you went in for old stuff, just like Mr. Richards does."
"Time for a change," said Irene between sips. "The tea is truly wonderful, and thank you for the cake. I shall eat it later." Tilly was getting nowhere fast. Madam next door was going to be wanting some answers, and then there was the bread. "I didn't tell anyone about my move," said Irene.
"Oh, I see."
"I wish I saw," Irene admitted, her tone sombre. "Followed my instincts rather than my head, I'm afraid."
"Right."
The bread could be near the top of the bowl by now. She had to divide it, make 2 one-pounders, half a dozen flour cakes, and, if there was any left, a fruit loaf for Mark. And there was still a bit of ironing. Tilly decided to come clean.
"It's Stella," she confessed. "Dr. Dyson, Mr. Richards' sister-in-law. She lives and works across road, and she saw you moving in, so she came over and sent me to find out why you're here. So I'm asking, why are you here?"
How much time do I have to find the answer to that question?
"About 2.5 minutes, no injury time added on."
Irene found herself grinning. This Tilly Povey woman was a character, unafraid and rather eccentric, amusing and terribly outspoken. "My husband disowned our son because mental illness terrifies him. I have come to Chorley New Road so that I might help when Matthew comes home." There. It was out in the open, and it needed to be.
"That'll do," answered Tilly. "Is it all right if I tell her that? Only I'm thinking about me bread, you see. It's not that I don't care, because your son did his best for Emily's Molly. Mind, he could be closer to his own son, but never mind, 'cause there's none of us perfect. So I'm bothered about what happens to Mr. Richards, only I'm bothered about me bread too."
For the first time in years, Irene Richards was helpless with laughter. This woman should have been on the halls, ought to have been used to entertain troops during times of conflict. She was a tonic, a tease, and an absolute hoot. Tilly watched the laughing neighbour. She hoped this wasn't the hystericals, because she hadn't time to cope.
"Are you fit to be left on your own?" she asked. "Only I've got me—"
"Your bread to bake, yes, yes." Irene dried her streaming eyes. "I shall come along later to explain myself. Mrs. Dyson will be there this evening, I take it." Tilly nodded. She'd heard about the high-born being a bit high-strung, and this one was strung as tightly as a chicken trussed and ready for the oven.
"Are you sure you'll be all right?" she asked dubiously. "Only Stella's a doctor. I could send her in to give you the once-over."
"I'm fine," Irene insisted.
"Good,"
said Tilly, her tone demonstrating deep uncertainty. She left the cup, saucer, and plate, making her exit rapidly. If Stella wanted to know anything else, she could do her own dirty work or wait till later on. Tilly slammed the back door of Coniston in her wake and stared hard at Stella Dyson. She marched to the table, whipped the muslin off her dough, and prodded to test the consistency.
"Well?"
Stella asked. Tilly sniffed.
"It'll do. I might even get a fruit loaf out of it."
"Oh, stop being deliberately obtuse, Tilly. You know what I'm talking about. Come on, out with it." Tilly pretended to ponder.
"Oh, I see what you mean. Her next door. Is that what you're on about?"
"Yes." Stella's teeth were gritted.
"Right, I see. Well, it is Mrs. Richards. Yes, she has moved in, and yes, it's so that she'll be near her son when he gets out of yon place."
"Ah."
"But,"
Tilly waved the deadly knife with which she intended to cut the dough into portions,
"but don't send me back, because she's as daft as a bucket of frogs. In fact, she could swap places with her son."
Sample complete. Ready to continue?